Greetings! In today's video, I am making a crab. The first thing to do is plan out the steps of the build on paper. This paper in particular holds some of my high school probability notes. It's safe to say that I take notes like a deranged lobster, and you are expected to righteously singe me in the comments as a consequence. Needless to say, I had reference images pulled up from Google, and I have recently been playing a bunch of this excellent game called Raven's Watch. The second level has a crab mob that regularly whoops my booty, therefore I took some visual cues from that as well. The shape I settle on for the shell is heavily inspired by Callinectis sapidus, the Atlantic blue crab, which has a very interesting array of spiky bits around it. Here, I am choosing which half of the body looks less goofy so that I can ignore the other half while building. And I experiment with the idea of these weird flipper thingies on the back of blue crabs, which I decide against in the end. As past me begins experimenting with different claw shapes and sizes, I want to bring up a comment on the Barracuda video that pointed out how it didn't have any teeth or proper eyes. Although I will partially defend the eyes as being present in the empty space, I have ultimately resolved to try adding more detail to this current build at least. Incorporate some of the criticism, if you will. Presently, it is time to start working with wire. The part I start on is the shell, beginning with a spiral that works its way outward. At some point, I had dreamed that perhaps the top of my build could be one continuous piece, but as will soon become apparent, this is not to be. I start to work on the outline, careful to emulate all the spiky bits. It's also at this point that I decide to shrink my build in comparison to the drawing. Working with metal can at times be quite frustrating, as one moment it seems to resist you with the strength of an elephant, and the next, it snaps like a twig. The second snap definitely crushed my dreams, and I resolved to make the most of it with compromise. Here I overlay my spiral with my outline, and you can see me pondering my choices. The solution is to shrink the spiral and attach it securely to the center of the crab. Then, I see to filling in the gaps a bit with some curvy pieces of wire, and I stop to admire my progress. It is time to make many legs. Not as many as the octopus, but quite a task nonetheless. Each one is made of 3 wires that coil around each other in a spiral. The ends on one side get fashioned into hoops for ease of attachment to the body, and the other end gets tapered into a pointy-ish object that isn't all that pointy as to not damage any surfaces it's being placed on top of. It's in moments like these that the resisting with the strength of an elephant bit really becomes apparent. When you coil wire together, it becomes extremely stubborn. But at least, at the end of it, we have a leg. Here, past me as you witness all the trimmings thus far, and the progress that we've made. It's time for claws. Not Santa Claus, crab claws. The process of this is in many ways similar to the snout of the barracuda, just with a little less structure. Most of the work is outlining the shapes correctly and scaling them well to the size of the shell. In that regard, I'm actually pretty sure that all of the limbs ended up a little too big for the body. Not oversized enough that it really sticks out, but I could have probably shrunk them a little more. I connected the outlines together with wire to stop them flooping all over the place so that I can start thinking about the pose. Then, I heat up my soldering iron and I get to work. The soldering helps keep the pieces stable and makes wrapping the claws an enjoyable experience rather than an excruciating one. As I trudge along, I can see the vision in my mind coming together in the metal. With both claws complete, it becomes time for assembly. This step resembles a very messy sewing endeavor. Fortunately, it's the bottom of the crab and nobody ever has to see it. I also promise to do a neater job of sewing when I inevitably post a video making things with cloth or leather. However, until then, this knot of nefarious noodles will have to suffice. One criticism I have for myself here is that I only gave myself one support down the center of the crab where to attach the legs. As I mentioned at least once in the barracuda video, that's an excellent way to make a hinge good and your life difficult. I should have definitely added a crossbeam or several so the nefarious noodle knot would find better, more stable purchase. Aside from looking unpleasant and cringe, the imitation sewing is quite fun and easy to pull off. At least when it's this disorganized. I will surely have to plan out more structured ways to connect things in this fashion in the future. The attachment method for the claws is very much along the same lines as the legs. Fortunately, they are mostly hollow, so the wire has no issue supporting them. They're a bit finicky to get in place, but it works, and I have no major complaints. Once the 2 claws are put securely in position, I move on to the finishing touches, such as the eyes and the mandibles. These are very simply just wire coming out of the front, shaped into rounded or pointy ends. The final step is to solder the facial features in place and let the crab cool down. In conclusion, I am happy with this build. As I pointed out earlier, I would have preferred if the shell could have been either one continuous piece or more of a blend between thick wire and the medium one. But after my attempts breaking twice in virtually the same place, I wasn't going to make a third. Beyond that, the limbs could have been attached better to the body, and could be a bit shorter, although the shell being in the way prevents them from bending too far up, so they end up being quite a sturdy base. The claws I am satisfied with. They hold their shape well and are imposing features, although almost certainly the next crustacean I make will be holding something or other in them. The facial features are neat. The one thing I could have improved is I could have made the mandibles triangular, or at least more shapely. Definitely something to keep in mind for the future. And there you go. That has been me making a crab. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the future.